What's going on, people? Myke Town here with a video that I wasn't really planning on making, but I just went and saw the movie Titane, and I just really want to get my thoughts out on it. I know a lot of you guys listen to our Frames Per Second podcast where we review movies and TV shows, but I don't really see us being able to do this one for a couple of reasons. One, it's only playing in one theater in all of Georgia, so getting everyone to be able to go see it would be kind of hard. Plus, Rod's feelings towards movies with subtitles. I don't really know that I want to do it without his input because I'd be really curious to see what he thought. So if that's removed, I don't really care to review it. But I still want to get my blah, blah, blahs out for you guys because I feel like it's important. So Titane is the newest film from Julia Ducournau, who also did a movie called Raw back in 2016, which I didn't see until the following year, or would have been in my best of the year video because I think that movie is just fantastic. And after seeing it, I was eagerly awaiting her next film. Then I saw talks about this kind of making the rounds, and yeah, I saw a trailer pop up, but I decided that I wasn't going to watch it. I think I watched like the first couple seconds, then I turned it off because I kind of wanted to walk into this blind. And I'll tell you, I'm really glad that I did that because that is the best way to see this film. I literally knew nothing about it walking in. No plot lines, nothing at all. So before I go any further, I'm going to say this. If you've not seen this film yet, I'm going to give you a spoiler-free synopsis, a real quick one. It's fucking great. Okay? It's an amazing story about a woman's weird issues with intimacy and how that plays into her relationship with a stranger. There. Now, please turn off this video, go see the movie, and then come back later and we can talk about it. But for the rest of you guys, let's really get into this one, man. The movie starts off with a father and a daughter driving around. He's listening to some 16 horsepower, which is a great way, in my opinion, to start off a film. But they get into an accident and the girl's hurt extremely bad and she ends up needing a metal plate in her head. And if you notice during that amazing shot with the little girl with the metal piece over her head and she's looking angrily at her father, this is the beginning of her issues, at least that we see, with intimate relationships as she's experiencing how love can hurt. She loves her father, but he's hurt her. And after this, he begins to resent her. Almost like her being hurt is a huge inconvenience for him. This is also the beginning of us getting the idea that she's someone desperate for attention. Her annoying the father in the car can be seen as something that's just simply annoying, but it can also be looked at as a child's struggle for attention from her father. That's what kids do when they want attention. They kind of annoy their parents. And this is something that plays out throughout the rest of the film. This is also the beginning of us seeing her weird relationship with cars. After getting her surgery, the first thing she does is she hugs the car. And this can be seen in a few different ways. One being just her falling in love or lust with cold machines, which is something that she ends up being later on in the movie. But it can also be looked at as how victims care for their abusers, and sometimes they don't see the issue with that as they feel like they're getting what they need from that abuser while thinking that the hurt is just a byproduct of the relationship. We fast forward and we see the girl, who we find out later is named Alexia, is working as a dancer at some sort of car show. We see that she's extremely sexy with the car, almost like she's fucking it, but this is also where we find out that she's a killer as she murders an overzealous fan. And this interaction is odd, but it's also telling. The fan aggressively harasses her about getting an autograph and then ends up being pushy about getting a kiss. She sort of lets it happen, and before killing him, you sort of see her getting into it and, kind of kissing him back. And what I took from this is she doesn't know how to process intimate relationships. Early in her life, intimacy is coupled with violence, so she carries that with her throughout her life and throughout the film. But before we get into the details of that, I was a bit unsure about the foam that's coming from the fan's mouth as he's being killed. So if someone can explain that, that would be tight. After the murder of the fan, she ends up having sex with a car. She fucks a car and she's impregnated by the car. But after this, she murders quite a few people. But the situations always start off with her awkwardly entering into an intimate moment. You especially get this with Justine. She's trying to be sexual with her, but she doesn't really know how. Which is why she's so rough with Justine by the water. And, then she ends up going back to her place and kills everyone there. And this scene was just so fucking good, man. It's so well done. It was brutal. But I also love this scene because this is where I started to really realize what's going on with her in terms of relationships. But the part with Jupy, I believe that was how you pronounce his name, but he's the big black guy. That part was really interesting because if you notice before she kills him, she hugs him tightly and he's asking her if she's okay. He's offering her his bed, so of course, this means she has to kill him. But this murder spree leads to her having to flee the city after one of the victims gets away, so she ends up locking her parents in a room and setting the house on fire. And when she's leaving, she sees a poster for a boy named Adrian who's been missing for 10 years, and she comes up with this idea to pretend that she's him, which leads to a fairly disturbing scene in the bathroom where she cuts her hair and she breaks her own nose to look more like him and less like her, and she also tapes down her breasts. And what I took from this is the whole issue of body dysmorphia that people go through, and her seeing something in the mirror that didn't reflect who she wanted to be or who she thought she truly was. We see her meet the father of the boy. His name's Vincent, and he takes in Alexia as his own. Now, I think from the very beginning, Vincent knew that Alexia was not Adrian. He may not have known that she was a girl, but I don't think he ever really thought Alexia was his son. But Vincent is a fire captain who is extremely lonely after losing his kid and I assume ending the relationship with his child's mother. He struggles to maintain his strength and vitality. He's trying to exercise and failing. He's also taking steroids, but he's also very sensitive, which plays into the whole masculinity aspect of the film. He's clearly so grief-stricken about the loss of his son that he accepts Alexia in as she's something to fill that hole that he's had in his life. He's so determined to accept the facade as a way of protecting his heart that he ignores one of his own employees who's trying to tell him that Alexia is not who she seems to be. She's actually a killer. And I believe Vincent killed him. I'm not 100% sure about that, but that's kind of the way it seemed. And the whole time Alexia is with Vincent, she's still taping down her breasts and assuming the role of Vincent's son, but her stomach is getting larger and larger as the baby inside her is growing, and what looks like motor oil is leaking from her breasts and her vagine. And at one point, Vincent catches Alexia as she's trying on a dress and is hiding in a closet. And Vincent pulls her out of the closet and tells her that he was always sure that she was his son, and he shows her this picture of his actual son as a kid wearing a dress. So we get this feeling that Vincent was either always cool with his son kind of breaking gender roles, or that he just kind of grew to be okay with it. But I thought this was a beautiful moment and a beautiful take on what I think was supposed to be the trans experience. You have someone who has many layers as far as gender identity who's actually literally in a closet, and a father who seems to be accepting of that. At one point he looks at Alexia and he says something along the lines of, "No matter who you are, you're still my son." And I guess this can be looked at in two ways. It could be looked at as him kind of refusing to accept who she actually is and therefore it's bad, or how I took it, which is him accepting who she is now while also acknowledging who she was before. But the movie ends up being this kind of interesting take on family and family roles and familial intimacy. Alexia's relationship with Vincent is an interesting one, but it's also sort of a tragic one. She spends her life looking for intimacy, and when she finally finds it, she dies. And then you look back at how her life played out and how it brought her to this moment. Her trauma defines her later in life. She's hurt by a car, but she becomes attached to cars and later ends up becoming part car. This idea of how trauma can carry itself through generations and sometimes become a part of the victims, and they end up perpetuating it onto other folks, which is why when the baby's born, it has a metal spine. This is the idea of trauma being passed down through generations. But I also think it's why we see her behaving very robotic towards the beginning of the film. She doesn't display any real emotions, and she's even really robotic when she kills people. But in relation to the trauma, I actually liked how the film ended. She finds this person, Vincent, who cares for her, who loves her and someone she loves back. And for a moment, she tries to shift that relationship into a romantic or sexual one, but Vincent refuses. And I feel like this is Alexia still trying to work out how these relationships are supposed to operate, but she ends up giving birth and she dies after. She dies knowing that this one person who actually loved her was there in her final moment. And she dies giving this person the one thing that he wanted, which is a child to care for. Although, even though she's passed down her trauma to her child, the child also has something that Alexia didn't have, which is someone to support her. You can say that it's through kind of sketchy means and sadistic means that we get here, but sometimes that's just how life works. Sometimes we have to go through these really fucked up things, and in turn do fucked up things to get to a desired result. A result that's not necessarily happy or healthy, but it's as good as we can get. It's twisted, but in my opinion, it's really a beautiful ending. Someone who's hurt by a cold machine, take that as the car itself or her father, becoming a cold machine herself, only to meet someone later who's able to alleviate a bit of that right before death. But overall, I think this is an amazing film. It's beautifully created, incredible cinematography, incredible acting, especially from Alexia and Vincent. And I think the lack of exposition here really works, leaving us to come up with the details of the story as well as the meanings for certain actions. I think it lends to the enjoyment of it. And I don't think it's vague to the point where you have to come up with too much. Unlike something like Lamb, which in my opinion left a bit too much for people to infer, I feel like Titane gives you just enough to be able to follow the story and justify actions and fill in the holes later. But it's an amazing statement on trauma, gender identity, what it means to be masculine versus feminine, one's struggle with self-love and the need for intimacy and affection. I don't know, man. There's just so much here to break down, and I've probably barely just touched the tip of the iceberg here. But there is one last thing that I want to leave you guys with in terms of this film. Something I wonder if others will even catch or pay much attention to. But the movie starts off with the song Wayfaring Stranger, which is an old song from like the early 1900s that's been covered many, many times. But the version they use in the movie is the 16 horsepower version. Amazing band, amazing cover. By the way, the song also circles back later in the movie, so there is some real significance here. But them using the 16 horsepower version, it could be another car reference. I could be reaching there. I don't know. But when you read the lyrics to this song, it really takes this movie to a whole new level. I'm just a poor wayfaring stranger traveling through a world of woe. Ain't no sickness, toil, or danger in that bright land to which I go. I'm going there to see my father. Said he'd meet me when I come. I'm only going over Jordan. I'm only going over home. I know dark clouds gonna gather round me. I know my way'll be rough and steep. Yet beautiful fields lie just before me where God's redeemed their Virgils keep. I'm going there to see my loved ones, gone before me one by one. I'm only going over Jordan. I'm only going over home. I'll soon be free from earthly trials. This body rest in the old churchyard. I'll drop this cross of self-denial and go singing home to God. I'm going there to see my Savior, to dwell with him, no more to roam. I'm only going over Jordan. I'm only going over home. That's the movie, isn't it? Isn't that amazing? Like, I have a hard time believing that this is just coincidence that they used this song. But, god damn it, that's fucking brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. But, yeah, that's it. I'm going to stop there. This is easily one of my favorite films of the year. It's absolutely amazing. I think Julia Ducournau is setting herself up for an amazing run with Raw, with this, and then whatever she does after. But, yes, that's it for my thoughts. Make sure you drop your thoughts down there in the comments section. And, yeah, make sure you check out Frames Per Second, where you get this, plus you get other people's perspective, so it's not just me running my mouth by myself. But, yeah, anyways, as usual, thank you for living, thank you for loving, thank you for being you, and I will see you guys next time. All right, peace out, boy.